Good evening. I'd like to call the Council as a whole committee to order. This is Thursday, June 4th, 2009. We're here for a budget review. With us tonight are Councilors DiMartino, Councilor Tran, Vice President Clark, Councilor Caddy, Councilor Di Natale, Councilor Bove, Councilor Joseph, Councilor Solomito, Councilor Starr, and Councilor Conry, and myself, Councilor Hay. We will start with the Community Development Department, Economic Development Division, Housing Division, Planning Division, and Building Division. Mr. Streb, good evening.
Thank you, Councilor.
We'll start with Economic Development, and that has been budgeted by the mayor at zero for next budget. We will then go to Planning and Housing Divisions, page 18, and it is $146,223, of which $68,593 is labor administration, $73,080 is labor planning and conservation, and expenses office is $4,550. Mr. Streb?
Yeah, if I could just make a few points, Councilor, about both this budget and the building budget, which are all under community development. That none of these pages show any clerical staff, the way this budget was prepared, and we're concerned that people won't be able to contact inspectors. They'll end up doing work without a permit, possibly endangering themselves or others, costing the city permit revenue, which isn't the primary concern. But in addition to that, we previously had a half-time office worker, and that served to satisfy HUD's requirements that the city adequately support the office, that federal funds aren't being used to subsidize city revenues. Now, I realize that these are conversations that I need to have with the mayor that council can only cut, but I just wanted to say that we're concerned that we'll run afoul of that requirement with this budget as submitted. In addition to that, this budget shows, well, one page of this budget, there's some typos on this, but one page of this budget does show the housing rehabilitation person laid off. And this has no effect on the city budget, but that person is the centerpiece of our housing program. He's certified in lead abatement and asbestos removal. He estimates and specifies all our projects, including demolition, and is key to our housing program for both Fitchburg and the Leominster program we operate with home program funds. But more importantly, we can only fund the Board of Health, which is $95,000 of CDBG funds is coming off the city's total, and the fire department, which this year is a new year for $18,000, with CDBG funds when funded with rehabilitation services to be provided to arrest the decline in the area. That's 570-202-10C. So not only doesn't it really save the city any money to lay them off, but in our opinion, it really threatens well, these are, again, I wanted to point that out, but these are discussions I need to have with the mayor. So anyhow, I'm ready to answer any questions that you might have about my budget.
Do you want to also do the building right now, or do you want to do that separate?
No, Mike Gallant will be prepared to do the bill. Oh, let me say one more thing, though, that I noticed in reviewing the budget, is it's not clear from this budget the expenses in planning and CDBG, which of those are city budgets. Now, Dick can correct me on this, but these numbers on FY10 targets seem to include CDBG and home funds as well, and then they're subtracted out down at the bottom, so council can't really tell what the city part is. And so those numbers, starting at the line for advertising at the bottom of page 18, in that section at the bottom of page 18, should be $3,000 for advertising, $1,600 for office supplies, $700 for travel and meetings, $650 for dues and subscriptions, and $0 for telephones, and which are for total expenses of $5,950. Because there's no real way to break those out the way this is presented, I noticed.
Mrs. Harrison?
Yeah. With that, Dave, it looks like the mayor cut $1,400 from those line items that you that you identified that are
Oh,
paid
okay.
out of the general fund, right? We can presume that. So you can see that you're left with $4,550. I would assume that between
okay, so-
yourself and the mayor, you could...
Somewhere in those line items, there's an additional $1,450 out of there. Okay.
Yes, so you would have to work with the mayor on which item,
I see.
you know, how much you're going to have in each
All right.
category.
I just noticed that the breakdowns were wildly off, so, okay.
Questions or comments from the councilors? Councilor DiMartino.
Who did your budget?
Well, this was something that the mayor prepared in this
You
format.
didn't prepare your own budget.
Well, we submitted a budget, but then it came back in this format.
But aren't you the head of the department? Didn't you have input on it?
Well, yes, I did, to some extent, yes.
So,
But I was surprised by certain of the items in this budget when they came back.
well, if you were surprised, why didn't you address it with the mayor?
I did address it with the mayor, and I will continue to address it with the mayor.
Okay.
But I knew that it was submitted like this, I had to go to council, and it's in council's court now.
Can I ask another question?
Certainly.
2 years ago, did you prepare your own budget?
I've always,
You've always
Prepared
prepared
mine.
your budget, except now.
well, I mean, I prepared the budget,
It's
but
a
then it
very-
came back in this format. I
It's a
just think
very
it-
clear question. Up to now, you've done your own budget.
Up until now, the budget that council was considering in this venue was the budget that I had submitted, the format that I had submitted.
You know, there's a thread going through all of these budgets when we asked, I'm going to ask everybody, because nobody seems to have done their own budget. And that's a lot of micromanaging. I might be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing. I always thought that the heads of department were given a chance to do their budget, come back, work it out, and then we get it. Every budget right now, the two last night, they didn't do their own budget. Now you didn't do your own budget.
Well, I'm confident that I'll be able to work this out with the mayor.
But you're not the only one, as everybody that came before us didn't do their own budget. Thank you very much. I just wanted to bring that out, because I thought at first I was imagining it, but now I know it's not. Micromanaging a lot, an awful lot of it going on. Thank you.
Councilor Conry.
I have one question for Mr. Streb. Between the time that you submitted your budget and the time that you received this budget back, did you have any discussions with the mayor about the budget at all?
Well, there were several iterations of the budget that we submitted, and the last few days was kind of a frenzy.
But
And so we did have discussions, and in fact, she told me I had to get down to a certain number, so I sat down with Mike Gallant and Larry, and we worked out how we could get down to that number, but then the budget that we saw then on that Friday night had a lot of changes from what we had submitted.
so those changes in reality were not discussed with you prior to it coming to this council?
They were not.
Thank you.
They were not.
Councilor Joseph.
So, just to get back to what you said in your original statement, on page 18, line 511175, that's a position that's CDBG funded, but it was removed.
Yes. Well, it's a home, also CDBG and home, all federal funded, yes.
But that funding is still there.
Yes.
So they just left the funded position vacant?
Yes, and moreover, what I was pointing out in my remarks, that it's a critical position for not just us, but other departments.
And did you talk to the mayor as to why she would be doing that? Is there somebody she wants to put in that position?
I never heard that. I did talk to her, and I told her that we'd have to have additional conversations about it.
There's a layoff in the building department proposed, is that correct? An inspector?
No, that got put back in,
Did it? Okay.
yeah. But we lost a clerical in the building department. Like I
Okay,
said,
this is
there's no
just
clerical in either
Like the
department.
last couple of years ago when we had a
Yes.
CDBG position that was funded by CDBG that was just eliminated by a previous mayor for no reason. It's already funded. I don't get it. Okay.
I do wish that the mayor was here this evening to answer that question for you, Councilor Joseph. My understanding, in my discussions with the mayor, is that that position and that money may be used for something else within the city. Because when I saw it, I asked that same question, and the response I got was it could be placed somewhere else.
But as I told the mayor, when we did have a discussion, if there was someplace else in the city we could use that money, then we have money to use that. There was rumors going around that it was going to be used in another area that wasn't eligible to use the money. And that, I had in fact, a staff person come down to me rather frantic because they had heard that rumor, and I said, well, if your position was eligible, we'd recommend funding your position. So that rumor, there's no basis to that rumor. That was about a day and a half before I saw the budget.
Was there any talk about, I know that over the last year that you've shared clerical in the building department. Is there any talk about a shared position, or are they completely gone?
The mayor has said that we need to merge the two departments, to move the building department down onto the second floor. No.
I knew that.
And that's,
And they come with a clerk?
no, they don't have a clerk either.
I love it. All the female
I think we're all praying for more revenue, actually, is what we're doing.
Praying for revenue.
I am.
Okay.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Streb, how many people are in the planning office now?
There's Mike O'Hara and most of me in the
But I
city.
mean, even with CDBG funded, how many employees are in the planning office?
Okay, there's 8.
And what will this budget bring you down to? Are you still at 8?
No.
What are you down to?
This budget would bring me down to 7.
7.
Oh, yeah, 6.5.
6.5.
Because we lost. And there's a little uncertainty there, because with the administrative assistant being cut to half-time, she can't go without benefits. She'll have to retire to get her benefits. So that is going to cost the city almost as much as they're going to save by laying off her half a position. That's why when I said in my remarks that it's critical that we show HUD that we're funding our office to the extent that they're not subsidizing the city. The other argument is that because she's going to retire, it's going to cost us money that way, so the net savings is going to be minimal.
It just sounds to me, the more we hear about how these were formulated, the analysis that went into these decisions. I mean, if that's true, that a decision to reduce a position will actually cost us more, how is that not realized? I mean, but regardless of that, the observation I had about this budget and other budgets that are similar, in a similar position is, you know, we don't have a lot of money right now, but let's say we get money, you know, down the road or a couple of years down the road. I mean, I'm very interested to see how your department does with a position and a half less. Because I think I have the utmost confidence in your staff that you can still do your job with reduced staff. And if you do that job, the same that you've always done for the year, when we do get additional funding, it makes me question if we need to beef up these departments back to where they used to be.
Yeah, but see, if I may, Counselor, the difference here is I'm not going really from 8 to 6.5, because those remaining people can't pick up the city responsibilities. They can only do the things that they are being paid to do. They're eligible activities.
So when you said that the...
So I can't, it's not like another department where I can just, well, there's 6 of us left, we can just pick up the work that the 8 are
When
doing.
you said, let's backtrack, when you said that it would cost the city more by doing that,
No, I hope I didn't say it costs the city more. The savings will be less. She was working on the numbers, and it looks like because of the cost for retirement and healthcare and all that stuff, because she'll have to retire, that the savings will be less than half of what it looks like on paper.
And was this
because of those
articulate?
additional costs.
Was
No.
this articulated to her?
No.
To the mayor?
I never had an opportunity to articulate that to the mayor.
Why didn't you have an opportunity?
I wanted to get through my budget hearing. I knew that the budget had been submitted, and there was no rationale for that. I figured I'd marshal my arguments and approach her after my budget hearing with what ended up happening to me and explain to her, you know, why there's certain things that need to be fixed.
Okay, I just, you know, when I hear that,
When I saw what happened Friday, I was totally taken by surprise and went down to talk to her that day. And, but after that, we haven't really discussed, I mean, I've talked to her since then about the budget, but never had an in-depth conversation. I wanted to wait until after my council hearing.
thank you.
Counselor Conry.
Yes, getting back to the building department, Mr. Strupp, are you saying that it's going to be very difficult for the building department to handle permits, inspections, etc., without a full-time clerk there?
Absolutely. They have essentially two clerks. Now, could we have Mike Delant come up? Are we going to take the building department budget up now?
That's up to the president.
That would be fine if you wanted
Mike
Mr.
Delant
Delant.
can, I mean, obviously can
Let me just-
articulate.
Let me just read those numbers so that we have them out there, okay, folks? Under the building department, which is page 19, which all falls under community development department, is $540,000, of which building and zoning is $80,021. Inspectional services is $210,137. Office expenses, $35,500. Traffic signals expenses, $39,000. And City Hall maintenance expenses, $175,742. Since we do have the building department before us, we brought them up to be with Mr. Streb, I would like to call attention to the councilors that we have a correspondence on our desk this evening from the mayor regarding that portion of the budget. Dear honorable councilors, I respectfully submit to you the following proposal for your consideration during the final budget vote on June 25, 2009. Reduction of $43,300 from the City Hall maintenance. That page 25 is incorrect, it is 19. And transfer to $7,670 library labor, funding for 20 hours per week, $14,630 Council on Aging labor, level fund, 4 days per week, $6,000 Council on Aging expenses, reduction from $6,900, $15,000 Council on Aging maintenance. The reduction of the City Hall maintenance represents a 25% reduction that will be obtained through energy-saving measures as well as the possible reduction of City Hall hours. A detailed plan is still being formulated and may require bargaining and contract changes. This change, coupled with the addition of $45,000 in library state aid funds approved, the possibility of $30,000 from the Council on Aging revolving fund not yet approved, fundraising and energy-saving measures will help significantly towards the restoration of the library and senior center operations to their 2009 levels. Thank you for your consideration. Lisa A. Wong, Mayor. Councilor Conry.
Yes, continuing along that line of thinking with the building department, this is a revenue-producing department. Not that other departments in the city are not revenue-producing. I would like to ask Mr. Gallant, without clerical help in your department, is that door going to be open 8 hours a day?
Counselor, no, it would not be open 8 hours a day. The problem would be is that the clerical not only answered the phones and worked on the number of bills and worked on people waiting on people at the counter, that they also took care of other expense items throughout the period of time, and they were always present in the building department. We had lost total clerical for a month last year from July to August, and it was very well noticeable that there are many times where the door was closed and the phones were not answered. We don't have voicemail within the building department, and the phones were transferred, the calls were transferred down to the community development. And even then, a lot of the questions weren't answered at that period of time, and there were a lot of frustrated contractors. After that period of time, we acquired the head clerk from the economic development, and also the senior clerk from the water department. And both of them, working full-time, can barely handle the load that's coming into the building department.
And what does that do to your inspectional services?
Well, the inspectional services would continue, but the doors will be closed. The inspectors will have to do a lot of their permit processing themselves and the data entry themselves. The other problem is the collection of the money coming in. With nobody being in the office, it would be difficult to be collected through the building department, and we'd have to arrange some type of process for payment through the treasurer's office.
I'm glad that you mentioned about contractors, because I've had complaints that they've come to the building department and there's been no one there. Time is money to contractors, and they can't be leaving a job, coming into City Hall, having no one there, going back out to the job, coming back, hoping that somebody's there. So I would like to suggest to Mr. Strub that these concerns be pointed out to the mayor. I understand we have to cut, we're short on money, but you know what? When you got a revenue-producing department, we need somebody there so that they can get permits, so that they can pay for them, and the money goes into the city's revenue. Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to stay on the building division theme for this moment. The proposal that the mayor sent us tonight, asking us to consider reducing $43,300 from City Hall maintenance, is because as of right now, those three accounts that fall under building City Hall is underspent, and it has $46,768 in the account.
This year?
Excuse
Are
me?
you saying for this year?
Yes. So if that's the case, then we should entertain her consideration, and if Madam Clerk be so kind to add $43,300 to the City Council proposal cut list there. There's two more line items I want to talk tonight about, which fall under City Hall maintenance.
Fine.
Line item supply City Hall and supply other.
1 second, Councilor. Bottom of page 19, Councilor,
Okay.
is where that 43.3 will come from. Go ahead, Councilor, I'm sorry.
It's coming from throughout that.
Now, the other two line items, supply City Hall and supply other, was we allocated $35,000 to supply City Hall and supply other $20,000. Now, as of today, we are underspent on both accounts. Respectively, we have $21,668 left and $15,574 left. So I'm proposing for supply City Hall that we should cut $10,000 from that line item and $7,000 from the supply other line item.
No. Wow. No. What do you want to say?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Counselor Di Natale.
Thank you. I would like to, I apologize, I'd like to amend Counselor Tran's recommendation. I would prefer that the supply City Hall be reduced by $15,000 and the supply other be reduced by $10,000 as an alternative. I'd like it to be cut more. I'm glad Counselor Tran's looking at the numbers, because what we've gotten here from the mayor and what Counselor Tran was pointing out is what has been said by me for the last 2 weeks about accounts that have a lot of money left over. I'm encouraged the mayor has done this, even though I'm hesitant because the plan she put forth is still not etched in stone yet, but this validates the argument that there is leeway. Because last week we were told there's nowhere we can touch. And yet here we are all of a sudden miraculously with a request from the mayor saying we can afford to cut 43 grand. I'm glad that she's putting this forward, but I don't know what's changed in the last 4 or 5 days. The point is, it's always been there. And for whatever reason, every budget session, everyone's afraid to cut something. So Councilor Tran pointed out the numbers. I didn't point them out tonight because I didn't... If I'm going to make a cut, everyone should know why by now. But the numbers don't lie. These two accounts that we've recommended cut are not even at 50%, and yet we're giving them the same amount. And even with these cuts, there's still going to be leeway in those accounts. So, to me, I'm very happy right now, because this validates everything. Because this wasn't here last week, but all of a sudden it is now. And I'm happy. But this is a small example of a much larger issue. And I go back to the Board of Health. Again, there's another example. So we're talking here about clerks. We're talking here about part-time help to keep someone in the building. With these cuts we proposed, that's almost 300 grand. 25,000 of that could fund a part-time clerk. So there are solutions, and it's going to get more. There's going to be more. So I'm glad that this has been put forth. I'm glad the cuts have been proposed. And it's not just in City Hall maintenance, although that's the only place that the administration has indicated we should touch. I think this should be a message to everybody here that there's a reason why she wants us to touch this, because there is leeway based on the history. So we're talking about a part-time clerk or a full-time clerk. There's your full-time clerk. Even though the money would go to senior center, the point is if you cut all the money, then the mayor can direct it wherever she wants. But just think, if we cut 300 grand, 40 of that would give you the full-time clerk, and you wouldn't have a contractor getting turned away because the door's closed. Whereas last week we were told you can't cut a penny or else the whole city's going to collapse financially. Thank you.
Mr. Glant. Counselor Joseph.
Just for clarification on the expense City Hall maintenance, was there a request for $43,300, and in addition to that, a 10 and a 7 and a 15 and a 10? Or are those numbers that were proposed, the 10 and the 7, included in the $43,300? Where is the $43,300 supposed to come from? Which line?
The 175,742. Am I corrected?
Yes, but it also includes the other category that the two, Councilor Tran and Councilor Di Natale mentioned. The building City Hall covers the electricity, heating, fuel, and supplies. So that's where the 43,000 is coming from. And there's another subcategory with the accounting that isolates the City Hall building repair and care, which is supply City Hall and supply other. So those would be separate. The 15 would come from the supply City Hall.
Right, I got that.
And the 10 from the supply other. The 43,000 comes from the 3 lines above that.
Okay, so
69, the 40, and the 10.
So we're proposing to cut City Hall maintenance from 175,700 to minus possibly another $60,000, so down to $115,000.
That's if the mayor's proposal, and then either Councilor Trans or Councilor Di Natale's. Yes.
I guess if we're going to stick with Mr. Gallant, in the first 6 months of this year, how many building permits have been issued?
I don't have the account right in front of me, but I believe it's somewhere over 250.
250, so in these tough economic times, you still had 250 requests for building permits, and is it mostly additions, or how about new constructions?
A few new construction, there's 2 or 3 new homes, and then a lot are the renovations of foreclosed properties that are now put back into ownership, and those permits are for renovations within those places. And then there are a number of additions to and accessory buildings.
And how does that compare to the first 6 months of last year?
It is down by probably
Half?
about, no, I would say probably about 30%.
Okay, so your workload has decreased 30% basically from the last year to this year?
I thought you had the lesser dollar value, but just as many permits because the people are doing rehab, and that's what Katrina was saying.
Okay.
That their numbers are, I mean, I'm told that their numbers are high, but the dollar value is less because it's less new construction and more rehab and repair projects. I will defer to the building commissioner.
My concern mainly, and it's not for today, but because today we're in these tough economic times and nobody's really doing all that much other than sticking into their homes and refurbishing and getting things like that done. But if for some reason the economy turns around in the very near future, and we need to work on getting things through the building department, there'll be lines that are ringing and nobody's answering. So I guess this budget, it kind of devastates the department, and it doesn't look out for what the city's potential is going to be if something does happen positive over the next 6 months to 12 months. I know the economy is still on the downtrend, but there are some positive indications. But I think of all the mortgage departments out there that are wiping out their mortgage departments, and then when the things turn around, you won't be able to get a mortgage because all of these mortgage departments will be empty. And the same thing with the building department. You got a building department, and we're kind of devastating it or getting rid of certain items within it. And then if we do turn around and get to be thriving again, because Fitchburg was doing very well 2 years ago when the building boom was going on, we're going to be in the back end of it because of no foresight. We're just going to be saying, oh yeah, well, I guess we missed it again. So that's, to me, is more of a problem than it is the clerical or what we're doing right now. It's what we're going to be prepared to do if something positive comes about.
Councilor Conry.
Yes, I'd like to move to another area, and colleagues, you can correct me if my recollection is wrong, but I believe last year, when we sat in these budget sessions, we had quite a discussion about traffic signals in Fitchburg. We got a public safety issue here, I believe, because the traffic signal expense account has been devastated. Will there be a liability on our part in the city if we can't get out and fix these traffic lights? And how many intersections do we have with traffic lights now, roughly?
About 8.
No more than that. I would say right around, with the new ones that just came in on Benson and near Battles, We have about 14.
That's right.
So we've got additional traffic lights in the city of Fitchburg,
Correct.
and we have cut the traffic signal maintenance budget. The signal lights, maintenance, the services, we have cut that budget down considerably from $63,000 to $39,000. What happens if the traffic signals get screwed up at the John Fitch Highway and Summer Street or Lunenburg Street, or in Main Street for that matter, on a Friday night? Are you going to be prevented from calling somebody in to repair those?
Yes.
It's a public safety issue, and we discussed this last year, and it was cut last year.
Counselor, not only was the traffic signals cut, but also the overtime for the technician to come in and to repair them.
I'm concerned that there may be a liability on the part of the city, and I'm also concerned for motorists and pedestrian safety in the city. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. To Councilor Conry's point, I actually agree with the mayor's decision on these cuts, because this is one of those areas where a history of not even coming close to spending it, and I got the numbers right here. And when I was looking to make cuts, that was one area I was focusing on, but I saw that she's already done a good job at doing that. I'm not concerned, because if you look at the accounts this year, we're not even close. So these cuts still leave wiggle room. People may disagree, but I'm just going on the numbers. So this didn't raise an alarm for me when the mayor made these cuts. I believe these cuts make sense from a numerical standpoint.
Well, I
That's just my
think,
opinion.
Counselor, that if we have one lawsuit against the city as a result of us not maintaining our traffic signals, that'll more than probably triple what we have here. But
Somebody has an accident because the lights weren't working properly.
Mr. Glant?
accept your reasoning.
I just wanted to say that we were told to try to conserve in spending over the year, in which we have done, I feel, well. And now it appears that we are now being punished for that because it shows up on the Schedule E that we haven't spent the money. A lot of these areas, such as the traffic signals, a mast arm that goes over the street, if it's knocked down, is an average of $9,000. And in most cases, we need to get it up and running immediately. So we have to expend that money so we conserve and we don't spend throughout the year. An average thunderstorm will probably put out 1 or 2 controllers, which go for about $2,000 apiece. We're trying to keep all of these controllers up and running and maintained at a proper running speed. To cut the budgets down like this would mean that in those cases of an emergency, if we do get a knockdown, we do get a lightning strike, we're just putting bags over these lights because we wouldn't have any money to do the repairs. This money is in there so that we have it to act quickly when it comes about. To wait and come before the council and ask for $10,000 would probably take us 2 or 3 weeks before, and with the bags over the lights, causing probably multiple accidents to happen within these dangerous intersections. We keep this money in there not to spend it, and we have been very conservative on how we spend, and now it comes to the point where everybody looks at how much we've spent through the year, they find some money left, and we get punished for that savings. In the supplies of City Hall and the supplies of other, the other is the other buildings that we take on as the school or the fire department abandon a certain building. It's put to the building department. If any windows are broken in those buildings, if any heat is needed to stay on or to be kept up, we use the supplies of others in order to be able to maintain those buildings, such as South Fitchburg School, which was just closed and turned over to the building department. These areas are the old fire prevention building, which we had boarded up, or the old fire central station, which we had boarded up. This money's there to be able to maintain and keep those buildings up until they're sold by the Properties Committee. So, when you say that you're cutting it because we've conserved and you want to cut it that amount, it's really going to hurt over a period of time when we need to repair these buildings.
Councilor Di Natale.
I don't agree with the terminology that it's punishment. It's not just a one-year period. I think it'd be punishment if it was a one-year period. But it's a consistent period, 4 or 5 years. It's not a criticism, it's just the facts. Whatever the reason the underruns are, it's just the facts. 4 or 5 years, we fund the same accounts at the same levels, and they never come close to being spent for whatever reason. Maybe those 4 years didn't cause an emergency, but next year may, I don't know. But 4 or 5 years is a long period. And traffic signal lights is only being cut by 5,000. We were able to survive this year with 25, and we didn't even come close to 25. Again, if it's because we conserve money, that's excellent. I mean, that's a good thing. And it's also noted that we have to be prepared for emergencies, but this is a consistent pattern, and it's everywhere in this budget. So, last year when I was here, this year when I was here, I was told if we do this, we do that, it's going to put us in jeopardy, and every year we learn it doesn't. Now, I'm not saying we don't plan for those unforeseens, but, some of these cuts that are being proposed, there's still more in the account than what is historically spent. It's not cutting it right down to what they spend. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know if the cuts the mayor has proposed will bring them right down to that number. If they do, then perhaps I don't agree with that. But I don't believe it's punishment. I've heard that before from other departments. It's punishment. It's not punishment. I just don't believe in giving accounts the same money when they don't spend it for whatever reason. Because I look at essential and criticality. If we can get through the year, fine. So I just don't think it's punishment. I believe it's seeing what can happen given a 4 or 5 year consistent pattern. And the fact that we're saving money is excellent. If that's the case, why are we still funding it at that same amount all the time? Thank you.
Mr. Gland.
We have been fortunate. We haven't had any mast arms go down or any major controllers lost. But if it does happen just once, that entire budget is gone.
Councilor Solomito.
Thank you, Mr. President. In a way, I agree with Councilor Di Natale that if we historically underspend, then why do we allot it? But going back to Mr. Gallant's reasoning, I think it's a very strong reasoning that many departments have money in their budget, and they know when it's been done from time eternal, when you're getting down to the end of the budget year, the old theory was spend, 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 because what you don't spend, you're going to lose, and it's going to be very, very difficult to get that money back. So what happens, and it happened in every department, I think we all know it, is it was spent in a very, very frivolous manner. In a way, it is punishment if you find a department or a department head who uses his money in a very conservative manner in the event that an emergency happens. And thank God there hasn't been the electrical problem that Mr. Gallant has mentioned. But if there is, and it wipes out a budget, which is going to be here and say, well, we're going to have to find that money from another department. And no other department's going to have money because they're going to spend every nickel they have, because they know if they don't spend it, we're going to take it away from them. And that is what happens. And in a way, it is punishment to a department head who conserves his money in the event of an emergency. People talked about how many traffic signals we have in Fitchburg, and I didn't know, and I heard the number from 8 to 12, and I counted 18 just in my head, and that's a pretty small area. But I mean, I think that there are more traffic signals than we know of, or we probably think about, but just Depot Square, the Water Street, Water in Benson, if there's a problem, there's going to be a major problem. And the idea that we had a week ago of trying to take a very small amount of money out of the clerk's office, and it was a very minute amount of money, but the argument was, well, they didn't spend it, let's take it away. But it was then pointed out by the clerk that if she needed that for a special election or for any other issue, that money is gone, and then it's difficult to get it back again. For the amount of money that is being requested by the building department, the 35 and the 20, I don't think that's an outrageous amount of money to have them keep in their budget, even if they haven't used all of it. Because my fear is if we cut it down, they're going to use every nickel they have. And every department is going to watch it as a signal. Spend every nickel you have, otherwise it's going to be taken away. So I do applaud the building commissioner for keeping money in the reserve and not spending it in a frivolous manner. Thank you.
Mr. Glatt.
It always comes down to this time of the year when you look at the budget and the signals that there is always money in there. We're always looking at June 1st is the hurricane season begins, and we've been fortunate that we haven't been hit by a hurricane in a number of years. But if one did hit, it could damage a number of the lights and could be quite costly. The other thing is that the lights, I had a grant that I had applied for 10 years ago to convert all of the traffic lights in the city of Fitchburg to LED lighting. It's much brighter and it's much less electricity used. We've saved a tremendous amount in electricity on these LED lights. But the unfortunate part is that they only last 10 years, and each one of the lenses is $200. So you're looking at a great expense when you look at 21 sets of lights. Each set of lights probably has 12 to 15 lenses in there, and they would all need to be changed sometime in this year or the fiscal next year.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner, I hear you. I understand your concerns, but I don't share them in respect to the cuts that we've made. The cuts that the mayor made to the signal lights, you have to have that discussion with her. But the cuts that we've made tonight really doesn't have any impact on your budget. Under the building expenses, the line items under this category, we budgeted $42,500 last year. This year, as of now, you've spent under 50%, 48.2%, which equates to $20,500. So you still have 50% of that left over, and we have yet made any cuts to that category. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. To Councilor Solomito's point, what I've been saying the last 2 weeks is any one of my proposals has not been to cut these budgets down to what they've spent. An example is, I keep going back to this example because it emphasizes my whole methodology, is that sanitary landfill account. I won't get back into it, but even with the cut proposed, they still have 13% more in that account than what they have spent in 5 straight years. And I guess I'm skeptical as to why all of a sudden this year it'll all be different. It makes sense what you said if it's a 1 or a 2 year period, but this is 4 or 5 years. And when we're losing 13 officers, 2 fire stations, the library is near non-existent, and the senior center's in jeopardy of being closing, I don't think people like to hear that departments are getting money they're not spending, and if people want to think it's punishment, that's fine, but, I mean, and there is no doubt in my mind budgets should have some cushion in them. You can't have a budget funded right at the bone, but there are some departments in this city that are getting too much, in my opinion. And again, it's not my ideology or methodology, it's just, I'm going on all these statuses we're getting. And I just don't believe, especially in this time that we're in, that we have to keep funding these accounts when we know 90% chance it's not going to be spent. Now, the mayor made this cut, so like Councilor Trant said, the building commissioner is going to have to speak with her about this, because if that is the case, then that should be brought up. Because when the city clerk came before us for the $4,000, I agreed. Keep it in there, because there's a great chance that something big will happen. But there are a lot of accounts where that's not the situation. And so every budget should have some cushion for an emergency. My point is there's too much of it. And that one example is an example of what I'm talking about. If in 5 years, if the money is not close to what's being spent, then maybe they don't need all of it. Maybe they can get through the year with 5 or 10 grand less. That's not a lot of money. And we keep forgetting, too, that we're talking about this on an account-by-account, being account-by-account specific. We have to also take into account the other accounts in all of these departments, not just the building. Some of these departments in total underspend by hundreds of thousands of dollars. If we propose a $10,000 cut to one of the line items, they can just cover it from one of their other accounts. We hear that all the time. That's why we have this leeway, so the other accounts can cover it. So I just want to make that point that this is not, these cuts are not proposed to go right down to the bone. They are to still leave some breathing room, just not a lot. And if there is an emergency, there is an emergency. But it's tough now because we've got public safety that's decimated. So I'm willing to take that chance for an emergency because we do have free cash, we do have a stabilization account. I don't think it'll come to that for an account like this because I'm pretty sure the rest of the account can cover it, the balance, if you look at the 5-year history. And I'm sorry if everyone thinks it's punishment. I just, it's excess. Thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
Well, do you have a...
No, you go first.
My question's on the custodian, so you can go right ahead.
I agree with your theory, except on a very small department like the building department. They're probably not going to be able to find that money in some other part of their budget. As compared to the police department, for example, if they don't have enough money in their overtime account, they can find it somewhere else in their $6 million budget. They can find it in their, God knows whatever line item, but they'll find it. But in any event, they don't return much money because of the whole theory. Don't return overtime money. If it's in your account for overtime, do not return it. Spend it. But if they go over that amount, they're never going to undergo. But if they go over that amount, they can fund it in another part of their very large budget. The same for the fire department. But a small department such as building, if they go over that small amount of $20,000, and their account is very small as it is, they're not going to be able to find it in another part of their budget. And if they cannot come here and ask for the money out of the stabilization account, or they can, but with a 2/3 vote required, there's always the possibility it may or may not pass depending on the vote of the board requiring a high amount. So I think it does in a way, and I'm not going to rehash it, I've already said it once and I won't again, but there is a punishment to a small department who can't go elsewhere in their budget to fund an emergency item. And like Mr. Galland has pointed out, at those lenses to be replaced, and his reasoning is well-based. He isn't saying, well, in the event something happens, he's told you the cost of the lens, they're due to burn out in a period of time, and he's projecting that if it isn't this year, it may very well be next year. And I would applaud a department head for saying, I've looked ahead, I've planned ahead, I've underspent, and for the day this happens, and the day has come, and we have the money, and I don't have to go back to the council or go from another department. I applaud that type of reasoning, and thank you.
Councilor DiMartino.
Mike, did you do your own budget?
No, Counselor.
Okay. And the clerk that they're going to be letting go, and I'm going to make this request to you, Mr. Saracen, how much will it cost us for the unemployment?
It would probably be half of the salary of the clerk, and it could run, actually, with the new stimulus plan, it could run over 52 weeks. So it could be, if the salary was $800 a week, it could be $420,000, 20. And it could be higher for other positions.
Mr. Gallant, when, as you know, you have a surplus because you've been very conservative, which I also commend, at any time, could you have went to the mayor and say, there's a little surplus, can I use that money to keep the clerk? Is that a possibility? Was ever that discussed?
I did go, well, I did see Dave in regards to trying to save the local inspector when that had came up on the block, that we found items within the personnel budget to save the local inspector. The problem is that I have no clerks in my budget, haven't for a year. That the clerk that's going to be laid off is Economic Development's head clerk, and the clerk that's helping out is the Water Department's senior clerk.
So as of the 1st of July, there'll only be 4 people in your office, and most of them will be out on inspections.
Correct.
So as a developer, I can go up to your apartment and there may be nobody there.
That's correct.
It sends a very negative message about our city that we're not open for business. Thank you very much.
Councilor Joseph.
That's what they make cell phones for. Leave the cell phone number on the door, call me, and I will get back to you as soon as possible and set up an appointment when you can come in and we can discuss permits. That way you don't have to be sitting in the office waiting for somebody. The custodian, where there's a building of this size that has daily maintenance requirements, what's the plan?
Plan right now is to leave it up to each department to keep their areas clean and to empty their own rubbish. And recycling. And the recycling. We have designated to the different departments. We have a recycling dumpster out in the parking lot right next to the hot dog stand, and then we have another one on the other side for everyday rubbish. And each department is to take care of their own.
So the custodian doesn't do any light maintenance? He only does custodial work?
Pretty much.
So if something, a light bulb or something that needs to get changed in City Hall, who normally does that?
That's the wiring inspector.
Okay. I thought the custodian was semi-maintenance as well. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the Community Development Department? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, councilors.
We'll now move on to Finance and Administration Department, which is made up of the Auditing Division, Assessors Division, Information Technology Division, Purchasing Division, and Treasurer Collector Division. Starting with the Auditing Division on page 10. Good evening, gentlemen.
Council President, councilors.
We have in the Auditing Division, Auditor Labor, the total is $198,542. Auditor Labor, $148,692. Auditor Office Expenses, $4,850. Audit Services Expenses, $45,000. Got me, Mr.
Hi,
Saracen?
Councilor. Yes, I just have a brief statement, and then I'd be happy to answer questions. We're a very busy department that performs many critical functions for the city. Approximately $130 million flows in and out of the city each year, which we oversee and account for, and that's involving all the funds of the city. The department was downsized in fiscal year 2007 with the cut of the assistant to the auditor. Looking at other comparable cities, the department continues to have the lowest staffing complement. Fortunately, I have a strong veteran head clerk who is a great support, and in the retirement office, I have an excellent board administrator who helps me with several city projects. The staff also provides additional help to departments who have been downsized, and especially those who no longer have clerical support, as you talked about earlier. The key here is it's better to put in the time with these department heads or these these personnel to make sure what gets entered on payroll or warrants or whatever is correct, so that we don't have to go back and fix or correct. As a member of the finance team, Brian and Tom and I, we meet daily. There's good communication and a team approach, which is very important with all the issues we face in our city, given its size. We're a good-sized city. One thing I wanted to point out was with the audit services, that basically covers the citywide outside audit. With a credit, the schools pay for $23,000 of the total audit. The other item, nothing is budgeted for the actuary services because that's an item that is done every other year. So we will, you'll see that in next year's budget. And I'd be happy to answer questions on this budget.
Councilor DiMartino.
The outside audit went up this year.
What, I'm sorry?
It increased this year, didn't it?
Well, the revised 09 is 68,000, so basically it's about the same. Yep.
And the outside audit, is that the same audit that we always had?
Yes. Yes.
Hadn't there been some talk that we should have got another auditor, instead of just keeping the same auditor, we should keep rotating and getting a different one all the time?
There was some discussion on that. I think given, one is this firm does do Leominster. We did go out to bid together many years ago. They're still with Leominster. They do a number of, they specialize in municipal government, municipal finance. And I think the feeling at the time was because of the transitions that we were going on in the city with new people in finance, and there was a lot happening, it was better to not change too many items at that time. Sometimes you get a new auditor, and you got to train them on how the systems flow through the city. This firm comes in, they pretty much know how we operate. But, I mean, it is something that has been discussed.
How long have we had this particular one?
I would say since the mid-'90s.
And we've had many crises financially in our city since the and it's the same auditor.
Yep, we've had a couple.
I think it's always good to change, and a new broom sweeps much cleaner. Just my opinion, of course.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dick was very nice in saying that there's $130 million coming in the city that goes through his office, and he's got a good team. But we must remember, in that Department of Revenue report that we received last year, one of the things that they mentioned was an assistant to the auditor, and that's something that I think the mayor will have to look at the end of this budget. I think that's a very important position. I mean, we've made some improvements in that report, stabilization fund being one of them and some of the other ones, but clearly the Department of Revenue would like us to get an assistant to the auditor. That's something that we have to put on the table. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding the auditing division on page 10? Now we'll move to the auditing division employee benefits, page 39, which is a total of $21,660,000.
Well, I could briefly go through each item and then offer some explanation, which may help. The pension non-contrib, that is for, there's 8 people that remain in this account. This is for people who either are beneficiaries or were workers for the city prior to 1939. So, as you can see, that account decreases by the nature of the account. The contributory pension, $7,060,000. That item is for the retirement system assessment. That is based on the actuary report that was done as of January 1, 2009, I believe. And it might be 2008, but this is the assessment that has been submitted to the state and confirmed by PERAC. Workers' comp, this covers the workers' compensation for the city workers, not counting police and fire, and also the water and the sewer departments cover their own costs there. But this basically covers the medical claims, physicals, excess insurance. We have that in the event of a catastrophe. And it covers the indemnity of that plan. Now, that account has seen a decrease over the past couple of years because there were a few long-time recipients that deceased, so that account has dropped. However, and the mayor did lower that budget amount. In addition to that, there is a plan working with DPW. There is a new long-term claimant or recipient that may be permanent. So, what will happen is there's room to put that person on the rolls for the long-term workers' comp account, and that'll free up the opportunity for DPW to fill that position with an active employee. One item of concern is unemployment. You can see that's budgeted at $500,000. However, in light of the recent news with the stimulus package and knowing we may be at 40-plus people between city 20-plus and schools 20-plus. If you took those amount at $600 a week, you could be at 1.2 million for a whole year that we could be exposed. But it's been our plan or thinking is that our goal is to offset the additional needed cost in unemployment with savings in other accounts, that being health insurance especially, and FICA, employers' FICA. So we are banking on having money, if you have fewer people receiving city benefits, that's going to lower that cost. So we should offset one another, not knowing how many people we were dealing with. Because the recent rules it's about $625 a week, and you can go over, I think, 59 weeks that is presently in place. So that's an expensive item for us. Health insurance, the city was successful with the mayor and the treasurer's office and payroll working very hard with all the unions, getting concessions, and this is the 11/8 that was based on the most recent numbers at the time that the budget was submitted. There has been some shifting, and I know Brian is working with the mayor on coming up with what the new projection is. However, as I mentioned, we may need any of those monies to offset the unemployment. Life insurance, that item we've actually increased, even though it has the spending's been around $190,000 a year. There is actually a 19% increase that will take place next year because the age of our population and the number of claims from deaths, mostly of retirees that have occurred over the past couple of years. So that is why that item went up. Employers' FICA, that went up slightly. It could be savings in that account. That is the 1.45%. that we have to match of employees' compensation. And what happens is the older people are not paying the FICA. Prior to 1988, those employees, I believe that's the year. Anybody after that year has to pay the 1.45, and the city has to match. So it tends to go up. Other benefits, that has been reduced, and it has seen a reduction over the past year. A year ago, I think we spent $765,000, but that was when we had a lot of firefighters that retired, and they got that extra couple weeks of vacation time. So that has gone down a little bit. However, even this year, we have close to $180,000, I think, in the account right now. But if we have a number of layoffs on June 30th, we will have to pay them those benefits. So it's good to have that money in our hands to cover those obligations. Police and fire medical. We've done well. This is to cover the medical benefits or the medical expenses for police and firefighters injured in the line of duty, including those that have gone out on accidental disability retirements. And we have been fortunate in those two accounts. It's $150,000 we're budgeting, and We've again done very well in those accounts, but I could point out, all it takes is one case. Back in 2002 and 2001, we did have one case where that budget was at or above $200,000, mainly due to $100,000+ was due to that one claim. I'll answer any questions in this area.
Those are comments on page 39, employee benefits. Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Actually, Dick, the last two things that you mentioned about Chapter 41, police and fire, why can't those be combined?
You mean,
Sort of law?
you mean as one?
Yes.
They probably could. It's more of a tracking that we could do that. It could be maybe under one budget line item and put them together. Yeah, I could do that. I could talk to, it would be a discussion maybe next year with the mayor. But
It's just that if you had 150 in one account, or if you have
Yeah.
75 now and you run out of money, would you have to go to the council to make an appropriation? And
I think we may, even though this is the 21,660 is a budget line item, we usually try to honor coming to the council. But I mean, I think it used to be combined, and we broke it out. I mean, it's more of a subjective, it could go either way.
Well, if you made it 150, chances are you wouldn't have to come to the council.
Right. Yeah, right, and then we could even break it out I think we like to track it between police and fire, and I know both chiefs are usually involved with those, so it is helpful information, but I think it could be combined, and we could consider that next year.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on employee benefits, page 39? Council Salamito.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the treasurer and for the finance team, I applaud you for the effort on reducing or the change of the health insurance. This was an issue that when I came on here a year ago, many of the councilors voiced their opinion that there had to be a change, and it was due and it was overdue, and these people in front of us are the ones, along with the mayor, who went out and they negotiated, and they went between GIC, and they had people from Fallon and Blue Cross, and they looked at every different plan. They not only found a better plan, but then Part B was selling it to the union, and that's never easy to do. And they did it. They did it by education. They didn't do it by holding a hammer over anybody's head and threatening them. They did it mainly by showing them that they could get more and pay less. And that approach, I think, was very admirable, and it worked. And what many people said for a long time was long overdue, it happened. And the people in front of us, I think, are the ones responsible for it. And I know an awful lot of work went into it, and I do applaud them for that effort. And it saved the city you may look at it as $700,000 savings, but if you looked at what the cost was expected to be, that being 13.5, it now went down to 11.8. That's a savings of $1.7 million. And we can try to cut $15,000 to $20,000 from any one department to try to balance the budget. But when you can find a group of people who can save $1.7 million, that does an awful lot. And again, I applaud you. That's all. Thank you.
We move forward to Auditing Division Miscellaneous, page 40. That is a total of $1,088,200. Mr. Saracen.
The first item is general insurance, $525,000. We've had a good year with Meyer. I don't know if you saw the Insurance Commission minutes, but we actually, despite the number of claims from the storm and the damages, the stone house and other damages that we've had, and they've been right there for us, we actually are expecting a 2.5% reduction in next year's premium. That is because Meyer, as a whole, has done very well. They represent most communities, many communities. So we have a budget of $525,000. This year, we're on line to spend about $480,000. It's always good to have a little buffer in the event that we have additions or changes to the values. And the other thinking on our end is, with the mayor and legal, is the deductibles that we pay out of the damages account do get paid to Maya. So if we had a few $1,000s in this account and we didn't have any available funds like we do this year, we could transfer the money maybe if we have it available in this account to cover those damage claims. But we haven't, we'll see later on in the year on that one. But that's the insurance account. The Montezuma Regional Planning Commission, that's an assessment that we get along with many of our neighboring communities for the regional planning that they do. I really don't know what they do, but I see the assessment every year. MMA dues, that is a good organization, and that is our dues for the year. Many, besides the Mass Mayors Association, we all, especially the finance group and the clerk, we all are members of the MMA, or Mass Auditors, Mass Treasurers, Mass Assessors, Mass City Clerks. Montezuma Home Care, that's an amount we agreed to help cover cost of services they provide to mostly the elderly. Johnny Appleseed, that's the 25% of the room tax that we get from the state, and we have increased that number because mainly due to the success at Cocoa Key, which should result in more revenue on the gross side. This year, we're hoping to get over 100,000, at least 100, maybe 110,000, and we have seen an increase in the amount that we received in March, which was really the first month or the first quarter that reflected the activity in that hotel. Memorial Day, that covers only the flags. TJ Blauser, he works with the veterans to get wreaths or other. It used to be 4,000, and you can see it's been cut to 2. Disabilities Commission, that covers incidental expenses if we need an interpreter, or there is some, we invite a guest, we cover maybe their travel, or if we go to a meeting. That would cover that. Medicaid billing commissions, that's it's 8.5% of what we pay the consultant that works with the school department and the city to submit Medicaid reimbursements for services provided to special ed students, transportation, tuition, and their time. This would equate to about almost $1.2 million in revenue. We expect to bring in maybe 800,000 in 2010. However, this year we're bringing in just under 1.2 million, so it could it could go as high as 100,000. We hope it does, because we'll realize more revenue there. And then the reserve for snow and ice, this was a success this year in that the mayor and the council put in money that we definitely needed this year to cover our snow and ice.
Any questions on page 41? Counselor Tran?
Thank you, Mr. President. If you may, I have a question going back to the auditor's expense, page 10. Dick, in the budget line item, outside audit, we budgeted that line item for $45,000. But in the year-to-date report, it shows that there's two outside audit. The $45,000 is not spent at all. The second one for $49,000 is spent $38,000.
Right. Good question. What happens is the outside audit really doesn't begin until the end of the year, but it relates to the prior fiscal year. So the outside audit, the $38,000 that you see there, that was for FY08, okay? And then the $45,000 that's in this year's budget, that won't be expended until probably, we'll start spending it probably in July or August. They usually come out in October, November. And so every year it's encumbered. We treat it as an encumbrance, and we put it in as a continued appropriation, and then it gets spent as they do the work. As a matter of fact, they're starting the retirement system. They're coming out Monday for 3 days. They also do the retirement system. And because the year end for the retirement system is on a calendar year, so that we're all set for them to come in.
So do you know yet how much will be spent from the $45,000?
Most of it, but I do usually budget a little extra in the event that there's a problem or we expand the scope of work for whatever reason. If there's a need or a need to look into something that we may request.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Clark?
Thank you, Mr. President. Dick, while you were talking a little bit earlier about the storm, I recall the fire department coming here a few weeks ago. They had something around $90,000 for reimbursable monies. Have we received that yet?
We've received $673,000 from MEMA for storm reimbursement. We have two outstanding items that we want to clear up before we ask for the money to make sure we've dotted our i's and crossed our t's on those two. The big job, which is the cleanup, which is still going on near completion, is the big ticket item in the FEMA expense, and that hasn't been submitted yet.
And let me just add, in addition to that, we have gotten money from Maya, and FEMA covers anything that is not covered by our insurance. So, like the flooding at the high school, Brian and I worked closely with the schools, and we submitted the claim. It was only for the schools for $10,000 because Maya reimbursed the full cost of, I think it was $38,000, that part of it. And,
So MEMA gave us $7,500 credit for that expense, so it only cost us $2,500 off the deductible.
And that was storm-related?
That was storm-related, correct.
yeah.
And one more question, just about the stabilization fund. I see nothing here. Is that because we're waiting on that land sale, or?
I think the decision was, given the difficulty with the budget this year, was to not use the stabilization at this point, but not add to it.
Not add to it?
Not in this budget. There may be other monies if we get other one-time revenues, possibly.
set, David?
Yes, sir.
Counselor Di Natale.
Thank you. Dick, the encumbrance, that's an accrual, correct? We're accruing, and then the contingent appropriation line item that's all over the status C, that's just when the accrual is actually paid? So it's like a reversal of the accrual?
Yeah, think of it as the last year's monies that we bring forward to the next year's budget.
It posts as incurred in FY09, but then there will be a contingent appropriation line item in the status C for that 2009 expenditure when we actually pay it in 2010.
That's correct.
Okay. And about the stabilization fund, I wasn't surprised to see this at zero, because I believe that it's anticipated that, because a lot of councilors and the mayor was open to this idea that the $500,000 that we should be getting from the state for that land restriction agreement would be best used going into the stabilization,
Yeah.
which would negate the need to put anything in there in the budget, and also negate the need to transfer monies from available funds to the stabilization like we did last year. That's another factor to consider, is half of our free cash last year we put into stabilization. The $500,000, I see like the $600,000 we did last year. Only we don't have to put it in the budget, we don't have to take it out of free cash. So that $600,000 that we spent on free cash for the stabilization, we don't have to spend on stabilization next year, because we're getting this outside one-time revenue. So, do we have any idea when we're gonna receive that money?
I'm not sure. I've heard it could be in June or it could be in July, and how we treat it could be tricky as far as whether or not we want to make it available funds this year or next year. And be aware that the one item that still hangs out there is our share of the cost of the ice storm. So that is one obligation that we want to address at some point. It could be this year, it could be into next year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on page 40?
It's not a question, how much do we have in the stabilization fund right now?
I think it's $1,019,000. I can quickly see. I was off, $1,021,000.
And what's the interest on that we get?
Right now, it's pretty minimal because the rates are pretty low.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saracen. We'll move to Finance and Administration Departments, to the Assessors Division, page 9. Good evening, Mr. Caputi. Good evening, Mr. Wilson. We have a total for the Assessors Department of $315,061. Assessors Labor, $268,361. Assessors Office Expenses, $46,700. Mr. Caputi.
I don't have a prepared statement, but just want to remind you that this year's a revaluation year, and some of the increase in this budget indicates the appeals based on the market conditions right now that I anticipate that we will have. That's one of the increases in the budget. This is my 8th revaluation since I started with the town, with the city. If we had gone out to a private contractor, we'd probably be paying somewhere between $30 to $50 a parcel. Every reval we've done, including this one, has been in-house at a minimal cost. I think we've budgeted, last year we budgeted $15,000. So there's significant savings by doing it in-house. And just to piggyback on what Dick brought up about the $139 million that flows through the financial department, over $40 million flows through the assessor's office in tax levy, motor vehicle excise, including the growth that we pick up. So I do want to point out that the past 2 years, because of the current economic conditions, we have had an increase in abatement appeals, and we anticipate more abatements this year in spite of the revaluation. Property taxes, property values will be going down, and tax rate will be going up. So most of the time, people appeal on the tax rate and not the value, but it is what it is. So if you have any questions, I'll...
Questions or comments regarding page 9, assessors? Councilor DiMartino.
When you said that you had people coming in looking for an abatement, is there a figure on how much the abatement has cost us so far, the changed? Like, how much did you have to give out in abatements?
We've given out, this past fiscal year, less than, I think it was $67,000 total.
That's remarkable in this climate.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we've been able to turn back over $300,000 a year out of the overlay, is because we're mandated to reevaluate every 3 years.
Yeah.
But we also do an interim year adjustment in the year. So every year, actually, we end up doing a revaluation, but only every third year we need to be certified. So as a result of keeping up with the market, there's no huge swings in the valuation, which, or the tax bill to prompt people to file appeals.
On the foreclosure houses, you've seen an increase on bringing them back onto the tax roll in the past 3 to 6 months at least. That has been something that's been saving us. But the people who buy the houses for $50,000, then they come into you and they say, I only paid $50,000, but you say to them, no, the house was valued at, say, $150,000. So they pay the taxes on the $150,000, not the $50,000. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But the majority of the appeals that we had this year were properties that you referred to. We did make some adjustments on those, but we looked at all of those. The ones that we made adjustments on were the ones that were really in poor condition. The contractors that bought them renovated them, and because we have the accelerated growth that we pick up July 1st, they're going to go back on the tax rolls as fully taxed July 1st, so we really didn't lose a whole lot there.
I think you do a remarkable job, by the way, both of you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on page 9, the assessor's office? Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tom, you mentioned that values will be going down in the next revaluation, and the tax rate is, well, the tax rate is going up. Can you say that it's a wash? Most people can expect a wash in their tax bills?
No, because we're going to raise 2.5% more, and last year, the tax base is going to be probably 10% less. So that just the increase in the 2.5 is going to raise the tax rate. So it's not going to be a wash.
Aside from the
everybody's going to experience it. Most people have, since we've had revaluation, because we tax to the max.
Councilor Starr.
Tom, could you explain the whole reevaluation with homeowners' taxes never going down despite their property values plummeting?
Well, if you're assessed fair and equitable on an equal basis, if everybody is, and you, I think the 2.5 is equivalent to $900,000. That $900,000 has got to be spread out over everybody. So everybody is going to, if all things are equal and all the assessments stay the same, then your taxes are going to go up because you've got to make up that $900,000. So if the rate goes up by 10 cents, your taxes are gonna go up by that amount. Not everybody's goes up, so that's why it's not equal. There are some neighborhoods, because of this current market, and that become blighted, so those values are gonna go down. Some values are gonna stay the same. A rule of thumb used to be 1/3 goes up, 1/3 goes down, 1/3 stays the same. That necessarily doesn't happen right now because we revalue every year, but in some percentage, that's how it works out. Certain amount goes up, certain amount stays the same, certain amount of property values go down. So those properties that go down are gonna pay less money. That has to be spread out over the whole tax base. So somebody's gonna make up that difference that they're not paying.
I wanted you to explain that. I get asked a lot why we continue to lose services, yet our taxes continue to go up and up and up.
It's only because the tax levy continues to go up. If values increased, your taxes would go up in proportionately less than what they would if they decreased. Last year, we lost over $100 million in value. So that $100 million in property value equates to a certain amount of that tax that has to be spread out over everybody else to be raised.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the Information Technology Division, page 11. Good evening, Mr. Bonilla. Total, $493,329. Labor, Information Technology, $57,629. Expenses, Office, $8,000. Expenses, IT Services, $427,700.
Hi. There's not much to say. We took a lot of line items from a lot of different budgets last year. We consolidated them. Took 9% off the top, so we were being very conservative this year with IT. We didn't want to spend any money that we didn't have to spend under the circumstances. We didn't know whether we were going to be able to pay our bills at the end of the year. I'm proud of what we've done this year. I think we're going to be giving a lot of money back to the city. We still have some costs that will encumber going into next year for replacement machines. IT tends to hold the money till the very end in case of emergencies, and at the end, and then we determine what replacement machines we need to do, what servers, PCs, peripherals. So that's the process still going on at this point, but I open it up to the council.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Mr. Bonilla, what's the status of our computer infrastructure? Are our computers up to date, like with Windows XP or the processing chip? I mean...
Yeah, absolutely. We're not up to Vista, but I not to go to Vista. I would say 95% of the PCs in the environment are XP now. Our servers are 2003. A lot of machines over the last year or two have aged. The water department replaced all their machines at one time when the plant opened. Now, as we're going into the third or fourth year, they're starting to show age. There's more problems, associated with those PCs. So at some point in the next year or two, we really should start budgeting to replace a portion of PCs throughout the environment. But I say we did a pretty good job. This year, we've consolidated all the old equipment and started parting them out to keep machines running as opposed to replacing them with new, just to try to save money this year, because we didn't know at the end of this year whether we were going to have enough money to survive the year.
Just to go on top of that, is at the end of last year, my department alone, Finance Administration, we purchased 5 computers at the end of the year to cycle out some of the old machines. Just to verify what Trevor said, we tend to do that at the end of the year because of a server or there is a major infrastructure problem during the year. We need those funds available to access and fix those. Therefore, it's the end of June, and we start looking, okay, which one's obsolete, which ones are more than 3 years old, which ones do we need to cycle out?
So we own all of our computers?
That's correct.
Is there any cost benefit in leasing computers?
Tend to not have benefits in leasing. If there was a maintenance agreement with a lease, I
Right.
think it would make more sense,
Okay.
but that tends to raise the price of a lease.
Okay.
I think, I mean, ideally, you own your machines, you schedule the replacements, and you maintain them yourself.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the philosophy next year or not, obviously.
I have 3 recommendations. I'd like to, line item 545439, under IT services. I'm sorry, 545410, office equipment license fees. Reduce $5,000.
Excuse me one second, I
Yes.
apologize. There's a mistake in this budget. Copiers and license fee are reversed. License fees are the 525200, which are fixed cost.
Okay.
And the copiers are 410.
Let me just mention how that should read. That should be contracted services license fees. The second line should be office equipment copiers.
Okay, office equipment copiers, minus 5,000. Contracted services support, 545441, 5,000 reduction. And the last line item, 545551, treasurer data processing, 7,700, for a total of 17,700 to be considered.
If I may comment on the treasurer's data processing one, that line item covers the Munis support system we have here. There's a few issues we have with Munis that we need to utilize and get back on track. The water and wastewater departments are currently set up as an accrual basis accounting system. That should not be the case. They should be transferred and set up as a cash accounting. If you look at the management letter from Melanson and Heath, you'll see they acknowledge that that's an issue we out of balance. We believe that out of balance is due to the cash accrual format that's set up in Munis. So therefore, we have extra funds in there to alleviate and update that problem so we can get it all back to a cash basis. Therefore, we'll remove that management letter point, which is our goal is to reduce management letter points so there's no risk on the city when they come in to do their audit.
I'm sorry.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Donahue, is that 137, so the new initiative you're talking about, which would raise the cost in that account, we're definitely going to be doing that?
That is correct. We're already talking with them right now. We've scheduled some dates with Dick Saris and myself, Ken Wilson, who handles the Munis support.
So that's just not in there in case of, we're definitely going to do it?
We are definitely going to do it. We are definitely concerned with removing points.
Okay, well, I would like to remove the reduction of 7,700 from that and just leave the other 2 reductions I left. Thank you.
The other reduction you had was the copier ones. My only concern there is I'm not sure about some of the maintenance contracts on those items, whether they've expired and whether we need funding in there to cover maintenance on those machines, because they did have maintenance contracts, and those are expiring because we're beyond the terms. So I'm a little cautious regarding trimming too much off of that. I understand there's, I think, around $11,000 still unspent in that account on a $30,000 budget, but I would be concerned with how far you did reduce that line item. And I didn't catch the last item that was being reduced.
That was 545441, computer services support.
That one, due to the fact that if you see at the top, the budget has come in with my IT manager laid off, and I will say Trevor's a dedicated employee to the city of Fitchburg, no doubt. I have some, there would be outside services that would periodically need to be called in. This being the first year possibly without that position, I'm uncertain how much IT support I would need from outside. We have communicated with some local area support groups regarding assisting the city of Fitchburg in their support of IT. I'm not sure what the cost is at this point. We're still in preliminary stages, but I would be very concerned at this time if that line item was reduced, because I'm not sure how much support I'm going to need. Basically, we'll have one person in IT to maintenance the machines in the city. There'll be another person who handles the Munis support. If there is any illness or issues with that person, I'm going to need a substantial amount of money to get someone in here quickly to maintain that system, make sure we're up and running.
Granted, I appreciate the explanation. I feel like even with the cut, it's still going to be 48% higher than the current year. So instead of 68, it's still going to be 48% higher than this year, which is almost $12,000 more. So I'm keeping that one.
Yeah, I would say that that money has been shifted from the line 2 up, that's minus 54%. So those are my costs to replace equipment.
Okay.
Councilor DiMartino.
Did you do your own budget?
I submitted a budget for finance administration back in March. At that time, the only budget that was in was the governor's budget. Since then, we had a House revision. Since then, we had a Senate revision, which was several days before. The mayor did make modifications to my budget. I did not remove the IT manager's spot on that line item.
Okay. And to Mr. Saracen again, this layoff will go on to unemployment, and now we're up to 51 weeks, isn't it, with the new stimulus package?
I think it's 59. It could go up
59,
to
oh my God,
59.
59.
It could.
So how much will that cost the city?
For the one position, it would be, it could run, based on the rate of pay, I'm going to say it could run $30,000 for a whole year because of the stimulus.
So we're only saving 37, really, by doing it this way, by laying somebody off.
Providing, you know, that individual, any individual doesn't get employment elsewhere, you know.
And then, when that person is gone, we're going to have other people come in and, as a consultant basis, I should imagine, coming in and doing the work that this person would have done. In other words, this job was supposed to be better than Carter's little liver pills last year. It was going to save us all. We were all going to be on the same line, the police, everybody. Then this year we don't need it. On top of that, why wasn't the assistant, there is an assistant to this person, why weren't they laid off before the head person was laid off?
You'd have to ask the mayor her input on that. As I mentioned, I did not ask for that line item to be removed from the budget.
Is the person that's the assistant to the IT manager, is that person capable of doing the same kind of work?
That person will continue to do the job he does presently. He will not have any extra duties assigned to him.
So what will happen to the police? Because didn't the IT worker work with the police also?
And he still does, Phil does. And
Well,
he will
won't.
continue that role.
He will until the 1st of July, he won't be there.
His job will not change. He will do what he presently does.
Okay. Again, last year, this was hailed as to be the most important thing to get us into the 20th century. We had to have it, we had to do it. Everybody was all for it, and now all of a sudden it's gone. This does not make any sense at all. Absolutely no sense. As everybody knows in the room, I have no computer, I have no email, I have nothing. But that doesn't tell, I know it's so important to have a good computer and otherwise. I just don't understand why this particular layoff is taking part. And I certainly am not going to vote on that part of the budget as long as that layoff is there, because I do understand the need to have all of these computers in place. And from all I hear, the man has been doing a good job. So I don't understand any of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I still don't have email.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I concur with Councilor DiMartino on her sentiments regarding the layoff. This is a step backward for our city in our effort to advance our technology, and you know, it's a disappointment. Have we made any upgrades or any work on the phone system?
No, we haven't. I've met with at least 7 different companies throughout this year, trying to find. We've went for stimulus money. We've applied for stimulus money to replace the phones. I've tried to go through grants through the Board of Health. and through the planning department, and it's been almost impossible to find money to replace this, to upgrade this phone system. Right now, we're still paying Centric's cost, which has been a big part of my job this year, trying to maintain phones. It's amazing how many accounts we have, or how many phone numbers, and how much they vary. So it's important. It's a priority. It's something that I want, or that we need to do.
It is important because this issue was discussed in the last 2 budgets between you, myself, the council.
Absolutely.
This day and age, we should only have one system,
One phone
account.
system for the city. If we could get enough initial money to replace the components, then the savings from the Centrix lines could pay for the phone system. It's that initial cost. And this year, with a budget, an unknown budget, it was very difficult to assess. And I think I'm going to come out of this year with $50,000 to $60,000 to give back to the city in savings from being conservative. But that's not even close to what it's going to cost to replace a phone system. So, like I said, it is a priority. I know it's one of the weak links to the environment, and it would make so much sense, and it would be such a cost-saving effort if we did it throughout the city, in fire, police, water, everywhere. So it is a priority.
It's a one-time cost.
Yes, sir.
It should be regarded as a high priority because in the long run, it would save the city hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the phone line item, it's $130,000. That's just phone cost. That's not replacement. That's just bills. So
The telephone account, it's underrun by $29,000. Yet, we're cutting phone system out of the senior center.
sorry, say again. I got lost.
The telephone account.
The telephone account on this line, yes.
It's underspent. We still have, as of today, it's $29,000 in it.
Correct, and that's still from as of today or as of the end of this month?
As of today.
As of today, it's how much?
I have here.
Got 29,000 as of
29,000.
May 31st. That's still
Right.
4 to 5 billing cycles.
And what do you expect to have left over in that account?
I would hope to give you back about 10,000 out of that account.
So there should be enough money in there, sufficient amount, to keep a phone at the senior center.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You've got to understand, I'm not making those decisions. I'm running a department as economically as I can this year, so.
And you're a great employee, Trevor.
Well,
You're a great employee. I know.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brian, the contracted services that are going up by about 16 grand, is that's because of the IT manager loss?
That's correct.
All right, so,
Bulk of that would be.
so if what Dick's saying, the unemployment will run 30 to 35,000, in reality, the city's only going to be saving about $15,000 next year with this particular layoff.
There are other benefits the person gets, health insurance possibly, maybe buybacks, there's a wide variety of other issues that might come into play that I'm not, you need to detail all those out to actually see what the true savings are.
I remember this conversation last year, and Councilor Tram brought it up, what a critical role the IT department is going to be playing this past year, and I don't think anything was more evident than those 12 or 13 days that we spent down the fire station and the job that Trevor and Phil had done, gathering information, checking, see if it was accurate, checking a second or third time, see if it was accurate, and that was most of your work that you were doing down there, and trying to, as we tried to put together a system to find out who had power and who didn't. This is a huge loss, the position and the individual. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Caddy.
Brian, when we reorganized, how many departments did the new IT department supposed to have managed or supported?
The IT department supports every computer, telephone, copier in the city,
For every department?
every department.
Given the cost of unemployment, $30,000, if added up the manager's hours during his work week. I don't know how much it is, but I know it's more than 40 hours. Who's going to do that work? The mistakes that are going to be made are going to be costly. So you have to add that to the right side of the lines where it's going to cost us money. There's going to be work that's going to be left undone that's going to cost us money. If you have to go to an outside agency, I think the costs are going to narrow, and you're not going to have an employee that's as dedicated as the person that we have. I think this is the most bizarre cut that I've seen in this budget. And I think I'll back up Councilor DiMartino. I won't vote for this budget. This is the budget buster right here. This is the most ridiculous thing I've seen. I have a computer. I can just about operate it. Thank God I have a wife that knows what to do, because I got to call her in every night to fix it for me, because I mess it up. This is nuts. Thank you.
Councilor DiMartino.
Could you tell me, Trevor, how much was the amount that you said that you were turning back this year?
We're estimating 50, but it could be closer to 60, depending on what I have to replace in the next month. If I could go with one server and 5 or 6 machines, and push it through like I did this year, through another year, we could give maybe $60,000 back.
What did you turn back in last year?
There was no last year.
There was no last year, because this was
my first year, yes,
your
ma'am.
maiden voice, so to speak. And you get 68.
Yes, and just so you know, Leominster, for City Hall alone,
Yeah.
pays $35,000 a year in contracted costs for IT, for outsourcing. That's not counting
Yeah.
police, fire, water, anybody else.
That was my next question, too.
Okay, well, to comment on Leominster, Leominster doesn't have an on-staff person like we will. So therefore, that service company handles everything that they have. We will still maintain an on-staff person for maintenance. Leominster does not have that. And one other thing we haven't noted, some of his money turned back is because some of the other departments, for instance, the Assessor's Department has their own servers. Those have not been replaced in 3 years. Those servers need replacing. So the money we're looking at turning back, some of that will be used to support the other servers in other areas.
And I understand that, and even from the 60, if we even put that down to 30, and the unemployment that is going to cost us is 30, it still comes up to 60, so we're looking at 8,000. So, and we will be going out, and they will be bringing in outdoor services and everything, and it will cost us. But there's no common sense to this at all, unless there's something that I'm missing, that it's a political issue, because I cannot see the sense in this at all. Thank you very much.
Councilor Joseph?
Just, I guess, a question to Mr. Saracen, because we have this question, or these discussions every year. What percentage of our operating budget is personnel, and what is other expenses?
I would say, off the top of my head, I would say maybe 50% maybe base salary, then 20% could be, so there's 50% of the whole budget, including school. 20% could be benefits. I may be off. And then you have other fixed costs like Monty Tech, you have the debt service, other contracts. So 70% of the budget, 60, 70%, including benefits.
So all the things like copiers and dues and subscriptions, the expenses, what are they 10% of the budget? 15%?
I would say they're not even close to that amount. The expenses are, as you can see, most of them, other than contracts. For example, my budget is $4,000 for expenses. It's, for travel, dues, whatever.
I guess just my point is that when it comes to cutting, there's nothing else to cut but people. Okay, so what person you cut and where you cut them is, it's devastating to every department. But there's nothing really to cut other than people. I know we found some other accounts that we found cuts to, but for the most part, when it comes to making cuts of major money, it's people. And that's why we're saying that's terrible, this one, that's a stupid decision, but it's a person, no matter what department or what area you cut in, it's going to be devastating to that department. Whether, you keep a clerk and cut an inspector, that's not going to work. You got 2 ITs, you cut 1. It's devastating for the whole city to have cuts because we're all personnel. So just keep on saying we can't do this, but what else are we going to cut? If it's not people, it's all people.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there's one thing that I failed to mention was the important role that this gentleman played during the ice storm. He was very critical in the command center, where he operated the whole computer system that provided information to the public, information that were relevant to our work as city councilors to update our constituents in terms of what streets were cleared, what streets were safe or not. He was an instrumental part in the cleanup, and I highly doubt that there are people out there that can handle the situation that he handled during the ice storm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the IT? Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to the Purchasing Division, page 13. Division purchasing labor, total is $161,142. Labor purchasing, $155,792. Expense purchasing, $5,350. Mr. Dotney.
Council President, thank you. Nancy Wilson, unfortunately, due to schedule change, she cannot make it tonight. So I will answer the questions, and if I can't, Mr. Saracen is very familiar with the department also. We'll try to answer all the questions you have.
Questions or comments? Councilor Conry.
Brian, I'm looking at the purchasing office expenses. Can you give me any indication as to how much money has been expended this year on advertising?
Sure, I think $100 has been spent on advertising this year, but what we have is they keep some money in there because if there is a citywide issue that covers under a 30B properties or something of that nature, advertising is very expensive, so she keeps a little bit in there for that nature.
That was the reason I asked, because I think $500, I'm surprised that you only spent $100, because $500 is nothing the cost of advertising today when you start doing legal notices or RFPs. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. I probably already know the answer to this, but what would happen if we didn't have a city printer?
Actually, I talked to Nancy Wilson about that. In June 21st of 2007, she actually handed the city council a packet regarding the city's cost of a printer and what it would cost to outsource. And according to that information that she collected, it was less expensive for the city to have a printer on hand than to outsource that.
Is it
But that is 2007. That was.
All right, I wasn't here at that time. Is it possible to get a copy of that?
I'm more than happy to give you a copy of that.
Okay. Another question. Does Leominster have a city printer?
I'm not sure what the setup is regarding printing.
Let's say we didn't outsource it. I mean, is City Hall going to function without a printer?
Well, just to let you know, some of the things that the printer does, other than the envelopes, which my office uses quite a bit, wastewater uses, water uses. She does school manuals, handbooks, forms, certificates, diplomas. For police and fire, she does a lot of the licensing forms and everything. So like I said, it is quite busy right down there.
I also want to ask the clothing allowance, is that contractual?
I believe it is.
Counselor Joseph.
Just due to the nature of where that office is and how it's situated, it doesn't lend itself to sharing. Is there a proposal for that office to move to a different area so that the clerk in that area can be shared with other departments? Because right now, it's kind of an isolated spot with just by itself. Is there a chance that that office is going to move so that the clerical person in that office can be shared?
There's no clerical downstairs in the basement where the printing is. You're talking purchasing upstairs?
I'm talking about purchasing, the purchasing
There hasn't
department.
been any discussion that I'm aware of, but that's a proposal that could be looked into. I'm not sure if we have who you could partner that office with, because that is a pretty busy office, and that clerk is fairly busy, especially with all the school bonds and a lot of school repairs and roof repairs and things of that have been popping up lately. But that's something we could look into.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Connery.
I'm all set, thank you, sir.
Any other questions regarding the purchasing division? We will move forward to the Treasurer Collector Division, pages 12, 14, 15. Debt Service 16. Go back to 12. On page 12, they are both at zero because the labor costs and the expenses offset each other. Any questions on that? Councilor Di Natale.
One question is, if any of these items were to be reduced, is the revenue we generate, would that be excess revenue then, that we wouldn't be?
That would be reduced. The revenue from that can only be used for parking resources. Correct? That's my...
Yes.
So if we reduced any of these numbers, we would lose the revenue?
Well, the revenue would remain in an account that's available for appropriation. Wouldn't realize any savings in the general fund.
Appropriation can only be used for parking
Right.
related items.
So it's a wash?
Yes.
I just want to say on this, on a positive note, as you know, Brian, the living on Main Street, I like to classify your parking officer. He's a phantom. I don't know where he must hide somewhere. He must be in 15 different places in one moment, because I know from personal experience, if I drop my car off on Main Street and I run into my building to get something, 5 minutes, there's my ticket right on the car. I keep thinking I'm going to beat him sometimes, but it's like he's nowhere to be found, and then he comes, he flies in and he drops the ticket there. And I mean, I just bring that up because he's doing a phenomenal job.
Counselor, have you considered that he just follows you around?
I just mean, it seems like he's everywhere. He covers a lot of ground being the only guy doing this. And I see him out there every day, and I'll tell you, we get our money's worth for what we pay for him. He must get this city thousands and thousands of dollars in revenue. He does a fantastic job. I'm very impressed with his work.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to him.
I appreciate it if you would.
And I'd also like to add one thing is, he doesn't drive the truck. I mean, he walks the beat.
He's on foot.
He hits the college and he hits Main Street, he hits the whole loop. And he's amazing.
He's a speed runner.
Mr. President,
Councilor Connery.
despite what you said, Councilor Di Natale, commending this man, you're still going to get a ticket.
I'm aware.
Any other questions or comments on page 12? Councilor Joseph.
If something like when I look at the parking lot out in the back here and the potential problems it causes with the garage that's underneath it, could there be ways of getting monies from some accounts in here to do a better job at maintaining the parking areas that we have?
When I first came on, I was notified that there was debris leaking from the top down below. It was metered at the time. I had sawhorses up. At that point in time, I was notified that that area is under building and not mine. So I mentioned the building as soon as they can get it up to power, I'll put my meters back. And obviously, we now have it for city parking. All the meters are removed. That is under building. And I'm not sure if the funds from parking can be used for that garage. I guess we may have to take and get an opinion on that if we were to look at that. However, the money that is in the account for parking, we have some concerns at the two garages we have. One with some stones that are way up on the top, which are 5 stories high, that is an issue that we are looking to address. So we have some issues with our own money to take care of those garages.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to page 14, Finance and Administration, Tax Collection and Treasurer. Total $501,017. Labor, Tax Collector and Treasurer, $285,017. Expenses, Tax Collection and Treasurer, $166,000. Expenses, Tax Title, $50,000. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. The tax title foreclosure, I understand that account is currently through 11 months. Has hardly been touched. Is there anything coming down the pike? And if so, is it going to reach even close to 50,000?
I'm not sure if it will, but the auction I just had, a lot of those expenses that will incur during that will go towards this. And there is a large amount of problem issues that have been there since I took office just 23 months ago that still need to be cleaned up. Everything's done in a priority situation, and we are getting to that, and we have gotten to that, but there is still a lot more work to be done there, which will cost a lot more in legal expenses to take care of that.
Okay, and I have 2 recommendations that I know, Brian, you're probably going to comment on, but the office supplies, 545,404, 5,000 reduction, and postage, 545,422, $10,000 reduction. Recommendations.
If I may respond to those? Certainly. The first one on office supplies. This year I haven't spent some of that. I will spend some more of that. What we have is, because payroll does fall into my department, ID theft is a big issue that I have. They just changed the rules that are now going into force on how you protect those IDs. If there's a social security number or a driver's license number and a address combined, those documents need to be secured in a locked environment. Currently, we do not have that situation. It's going to take quite a bit to take all the files I have and put them in some locked space. The vaults I have access to are all full. There is no room in the vaults, so that means I'm going to need additional locking cabinets. Right now, we're presently cleaning up the floor that's down below me near the printer to get that ready to put a wall of cabinets in there. Therefore, we can store that devices downstairs, not upstairs. I definitely have concerns since I first came here regarding how the payroll information and documentation is established in my office, along with the mailroom being in my office, so close to that information. Therefore, I'm going to use as much money as I can use in order to secure those information, because if someone gets their hands on some of that stuff, it could be trouble, and therefore it could relate back to me, and I have a personal bond, unlike anybody else in the city, that could now be in jeopardy, and I will not put myself there. Regarding the postage, it is, Tom Caputi mentioned, it's a reval year. Therefore, we're going to do additional advices to all the people in the city. Also, there's been a 2-cent increase in postage. That's as it is current. There could be another increase next year. That's not something I can count on. Along with postage, the way it's designed now, all city postage is expensed from my account. It's something I don't like. The machine has the capability to have it distributed by department. So what I'm trying to do this year is to have each department have a code, have them come in, they punch themselves, they process their own mail, and next year we can actually put line items out there, or at least find out who's using all the mail, and that way I can go after it that way. But
I appreciate the explanations. This is another department well before you came on board that has a history of underspending by well over 100,000. My proposal is cut 20. 4 years in a row, this department has had at least 80,000 left over, and there's no real significant decrease over last year. I'm asking for 20. So in a department that's underspent some years over 100 grand, again, 20, it's not even 20%. I'm looking at long-term. We always talk about these departments with extra funding to cover accounts within the department that don't require transfer. That's where I'm going on with this one in particular, as in the others. There has never been a point in the last 5 years these accounts have, in total, had less than 20 grand left. They've had well more than that. So I think, based on the history, the Treasury Department can withstand 20,000 in cuts, and they can be made up elsewhere. I'm still believe that there's going to be plenty of money left over at the end of the year.
I believe the original proposal was to cut 10,000 out of that line item. Am I correct?
I'm sorry, you're correct, 15,000. Okay, 15,000.
Well, 15,000 total. I think you had 5 up top and 10 down.
Correct, 15,000. Okay, that's even better, 15,000, not 20. 15,000 out of an account that usually turns back to the city at least 100 grand.
As I said, I would be more comfortable if that all postage was under my control. However, I can't dictate what Ann is going to bring to me or what any other department head is going to bring to me and say, look, I need this to go through the post office. So
I think I'm looking at an overall picture. Right?
I understand they're probably, you're correct. There has always been a surplus in that account. But like I said, unfortunately, all the other items I have direct control over, that's the one item I don't. That's why it's always been accumulated so high.
And just lastly, a comment on your performance. I think it needs to be pointed out, as always, to the public, because this is always a sticky issue regarding tax delinquency. Are we going after tax delinquency very hard? The latest status report, revenue through April, if you take all of the personal property taxes, the motor vehicle excise, the real estate taxes, from 2008 all the way as far back, you're collecting money all the way as far back as in the mid-90s. It comes to about $800,000, just on the real estate alone. And I try to explain to constituents who call me and ask me, what about the money we haven't collected in tax revenue? I try to point that out to them that every year we budget a certain percentage of tax collection, but we don't assume 100% collection. Let's say we budget 95, which I believe we usually do for revenues.
You normally budget 100%.
You budget 100%.
That's what they've done in the past historically. This will be the first budget without 100% in it.
Okay, but the 100% budget is not entirely contingent on that current year, is it?
That, correct. It's in all collections.
Okay, that's what I mean.
Right.
But what I try to explain to people is that even if we don't collect all of this year's tax revenue, we make up for that variance by you going after the prior years to get what was owed to us before, plus the interest. And you've collected 800 grand from prior years, which is delinquent money that we've got back. And I know that there's $700,000 or $800,000 left that's collectible, but every year it rolls around. The money that you're not going to collect in 09, next year's status is going to show the 2010 collection, then there's going to be a 2009 item that shows several $100,000. That's you sending out the letters going after it. And I think people need to understand the great job you've done, and I see it in the numbers. 800 grand we've collected on real estate alone from past people who have owed. So just to point that out, so people don't think that we're sitting on our hands and not worrying about this, that's a lot of money. And if we didn't collect that money, we'd be in a worse position than we are now. And I know the treasurer is still going very hard getting that money, but it is there, it does go into the fund, and that should be pointed out. So very good job.
Thank you, Council. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on page 14? Councilor DiMartino.
I don't know if this is the time to ask about this, but maybe not even to you, Brian. We recently took out a loan because of the storm, the 1.7 million that we took out. And none of that has been spent so far, right?
Money has been spent for some of it. And we have been reimbursed $673,000 out of the, that's 75% of the money which has been spent. The loan we have at 1.7, we probably won't borrow 1.7. That'll be the end of June when we actually ban that money, and we'll send that out. we'll get our money there, then as we get reimbursed, we'll clear it, and then we'll worry about our portion. Hopefully, the state comes up with 12.5%, and we have to make up the difference, and that would clear that ban, but we have not borrowed that money at this point in time, even though council has approved it. It will be the end of June for that.
Thank you very much.
Very well.
Any other questions or comments? We'll move forward to page 15. Workforce Management, $97,249. Questions or comments from the councilors? Move forward to page 16. Debt service, total of $5,230,828. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Certification costs and ban, what's ban?
Ban is on anticipation of.
Okay. This is another account that I think only has spent almost $10,000 on it. So what's the explanation for, I mean, I guess where I'm going with this, Brian, is if you were given 40, I mean, if let's say that's only 20 is spent this year and you're given 40 next year, it's still double what you spent last year. I know things may be a little different, but it's a pretty big cushion over what you've spent in prior years. But what's the explanation for with 1 month to go? I mean, is there any of that 50K that's encumbered right now?
No, that'll be covered this year due to the fact that we'll issue bans and notes at the end of June. So therefore, all those expenses will be encumbered against that account.
So that's an account that doesn't happen until the end of the year?
Normally, we do that in June. The only other one I did this year, I did in, I think near the end of October, was a $7 million RAN. Normally, in the past, they'd always done that in July. So actually, I saved interest and cost by pushing that out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Solomito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Donahue, on the long-term debt interest, that being about $1.5 million, is any part of that payment that we make back on a loan that we took out on Fitchburg High School?
I believe that is. That's all long-term debt.
Now, this is an issue that I've kind of learned, unfortunately, the hard way, and I'm sure that Mrs. Harrison can hopefully help out. When the high school was built, it came under the School Building Assistance Fund, under the theory of 80% by the state, 20% picked up by the city. And I was on that committee, and I think that I was under the same impression that many people were, that we had to come up with a loan of 20%. But in reality, I've learned that we actually borrow the entire cost of the $38 million school, and we then get state reimbursement in the form of the cherry sheet, correct?
Yes, we actually paid the full amount, $40 million. We submitted all paperwork, and we actually get a reimbursement annually of all all projects, $2.8 million. Of that, I think 2.2 is the high school, thereabouts. So the benefit of that project is that the timing of the reimbursement coincided with the timing of the debt payment. So the net debt is maybe $600,000 or $700,000 a year for that project.
But is it still fair to say that we only pay 20% out of the city money, or do we actually pay more than that, considering the interest that we pay on a $32 million loan?
It's $40 million, but
right.
we are getting the 80% on the interest also.
All right. And that goes into the general fund or into the school department?
General fund. And the debt budget here is the gross amount, and that is offset by the reimbursement. The total budget is offset by the reimbursement, which is added to the cherry sheet. It used to be part of the cherry sheet. Now it's a separate state aid item, but it is in there.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Joseph.
With the understanding that the school department might be coming in with a request for a loan next week, what position are we in to fund additional monies?
We are in a pretty good position. We talked to bond counsel, myself and Mr. Saracen. And as you can see, I reduced short-term interest by $100,000. I was fairly concerned that if rates move up, I won't have enough short-term interest to cover the bands and rands and sands that we do put up, which are all the short-term money. But after discussing with bond counsel, rates are still fairly low. We have it all coming up in June. The only one that isn't there is my $7 million rand I take out a little bit later in the year when I actually need the funds. But I think we're okay in that aspect. Rates have, fortunately, still stayed down.
So we'll be able to afford
Be able to afford those
fixing
short-term
roofs.
ones. And then next June is when we'd actually bond that money. So we take out short-term now and then go long-term next year.
Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. Was there any analysis conducted on what our limit can be right now in terms of debt obligations? Because I know we don't want to go too far because we have to be sure that we have the cash flow to pay those yearly debt payments. But, I mean, with capital infrastructure, building needs, the schools, DPW equipment, fire, I mean, I don't see any other way this city is going to make a dent in its capital improvement line items without taking out a bond to pay for these things, because we are not going to have cash on hand to do this stuff. So, I mean, I know that's ongoing, but do we have any idea what we can take on in the next 5 years?
And that's what we're discussing now, that we can short-term actually bond it. We have some debt expiring within the next year or two, which will help us recycle that debt. We try to keep a low amount of debt, but we try to cycle it year to year. Therefore, we don't get ahead of ourselves, but we don't fall behind and look like, oh, they're not doing any infrastructure there. They're going to get hit big down the road. So Dick Saracen and I, as I said, we meet daily. We discuss a lot of issues, also with Mr. Caputi, and those are definitely issues that we look up. We do have a very low borrowing for a city our size.
That's actually not a bad thing, but given the fact that we have so many places in disrepair, I'm thinking, I guess what I'd like to know down the road is what that number will be to fund maybe a new roof, to fund a new DPW. I mean, I know there's a laundry list of items. I guess I'd like to see what number we can start out with and then go through the list and say, we can cover these things with this bond bill, and then 2 or 3 years later, we can cover X, Y, and Z with the next, after we retire some of the short term. I mean, I don't see any way we're going to get an infusion of cash other than doing that. So,
and that's the thing, is we don't have the surplus of cash to be able to pay the debt, so to speak. So we're very cognizant of what we do. As the mayor has brought up several times, the Capital Commission, kind of to line those things up, you know, we hit them as they're requested and as they hit priority. But you're right, a Capital Commission to look at that long term and see when our debt goes down, which, you know, the three of us do look at quite often. There is a decrease in debt, but it's down the road when the high school and the fire station are fully paid off.
and has our rating bond-wise been improved?
It has not been improved. It has not dropped. We are, with these bonds that we'll issue in June, that will gain their attention again, hopefully favorable.
So if we were to put 500,000 from that mass wildlife into the stabilization, that would surely improve our chances of a better rating.
Any reserve money would look favorable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
I've got to tell Brian he's doing a great job.
Then tell him.
Brian, you're doing a great job.
Council, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Councilors, before we adjourn, Finance Chair Councilor Connery has indicated to me that next Tuesday, the 9th, is a very short finance agenda, and if the council so desires, I am looking to move Wednesday, the 17th of June, to following finance on the June 9th. Are there objections to that change? Problems?
Yeah.
Okay, then we will leave it as is. Just wanted to ask that.
We would